I have time. Time enough at last. Right. Richard Rempel, recent retiree, reading vintage SF. How's that for alliteration? Since I've been retired, I've been collecting vintage SF, partly out of nostalgia and partly because really, really good stories. What I like in vintage SF is standalone or singleton novels, usually pre 1985 or so, and I like them to be about 250 pages or less. I'd like to share with you some of the books that I've been reading the last 2 months. There's about 12 of them here, I believe. First one, thought I'd start with what was considered a classic. I had never read it before. Originally published in the 1950s under the title Tiger, Tiger. Many of you guessed already. Better known as The Stars, My Destination by Alfred Bester. Quite an interesting tale. Definitely is a romp in vengeance, but with a surprising transformation at the end. It certainly didn't read like a novel from the 1950s. Next, I reread one of the first novels that I read. At that time, it was called Monkey Planet, at least the edition that I found in my school library, better known as Planet of the Apes by Pierre Boulle. Sorry if I messed up that last name. One of the cool things about the edition that I got is it's from Vintage Classics and a 3D cover. Not sure if that's really going to hold its value, but I will definitely keep the glasses. In an upcoming video, I want to compare this novel with the original Planet of the Apes movie with Charlton Heston. So we'll take a look at that. Next, one of my favorite TV shows is the original Twilight Zone, and one of the writers that are often was employed by the Twilight Zone is Richard Matheson. And so I've been reading a few of his books, in particular some of his short stories. You may recognize even the name of this short story, this collection, Third from the Sun, The Shores of Space. Those were both written in the 50s, and this one in the 60s, late 60s, The Shrinking Man. This one is a novel. Very much though like a Twilight Zone episode. One of the novels that I read actually in college was A Canticle for Leibowitz by Walter M. Miller Jr. I plan to reread it, but I found some short stories. And this one is titled, this collection, The View from the Stars. There's one in particular that I think is fantastic. Hope to talk about that one in a future video too. I watch a lot of the BookTube channels on SF, and this one was recommended by the Outlaw Bookseller, and I read Fred Hoyle, who was an astronomer. The Black Cloud, I think it was 1957 this one came out. Interesting concept about whether a cloud in space approaching Earth could destroy Earth by blotting out the sun. But there's more to it than it seems. So talk about that in the future. Another recommendation was Ground Zero Man by Bob Shaw. Fascinating book. I believe it was written in the 60s. What would happen if a person had an invention that could set off all nuclear bombs in the world at one time? Interesting concept. Then I read John Brunner, The Whole Man. One of the reasons that I actually read this is I was interested in the cover artist. Name is Murray Tinkelman. And so I read this one, and then I followed it up with another famous cover of Murray Tinkelman's from the 70s. A very famous novel as well. The Forever War by Joel Haldeman. Last two coming up. This one was a revisit from my middle school days. Captured my attention. Wondered if it was as good as it was. It's a book that has a number of revelations which change your perspective on things. And I'm happy to say it was as good as I remember. Arthur C. Clarke's Childhood's End. We'll talk about this one in a future video. And last, I'm not quite finished it yet, but one of my favorite novelists is actually John Wyndham. I have a couple of posters of editions of some of his novels up there, some of the covers that I like. And I believe it was the Outlaw Bookseller again recommended another author for novels that were in the vein of John Wyndham's. And this was Keith Roberts, The Furies. So there you have it. 12 books that I've read in the last 2 months. We'll look at some of them a little closer in upcoming videos. Thank you for joining me. Where did I put my glasses?
That's not fair. That's not fair at all. There was time now. There was all the time I needed. It's not fair. That's not fair.